Many self-proclaimed scientists mock me when I tell them I believe the pyramids were built as hyperbaric chambers meant to mimic the antediluvian environment in which it is said that people could live up to 900 years or more.
Sam's hyperbaric pyramid theory.
First, let's take a look at what some ancient scriptural passages have to say about the people who were most likely responsible for constructing the pyramids and ziggurats that surround the globe, and what they would have used them for. I wanted to post a few more that also seem to back up my theory, but I figured this would be enough to at least allow you, the reader, to understand my point of view and perhaps see the pyramids from my perspective, which vastly contradicts of the more widely accepted pyramid theories. Keep in mind that I'm not the only person who believes that the pyramids were used as waterworks or to serve some other practical use. Granaries, impregnable fortresses, and even alien bases have been suggested, and never as two.
Before the flood of Noah, if you believe that sort of thing, the people who inhabited the earth are said to have been able to live hundreds of years, with the oldest man who ever lived being 969 years of age. After the flood, the sons of Noah and their wives began to multiply, but within a short time, Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth began to actually outlive some of their offspring, and most people began to live less than 100 years of age. While the change in diet may have played a role in their loss of longevity, the most plausible reason for their and our early demise compared to their great-grandparents is an obvious change in their environment. Even though none of Noah's grandchildren had ever seen the antediluvian world with their own eyes, they understood what it was like because Noah and his sons and their wives would tell them stories and teach them songs of rote about the earth before the flood and how God had saved them from destruction in a boat filled with animals. Noah wrote it down in Genesis, but many of the oldest cultures on earth still tell their children the stories of the great flood that destroyed the earth. Some of those people became kings and political giants, and they amassed great wealth through their exploits in the New World, but many of them would get sick and die at a much younger age than their ancestors, and since nobody wants to die, and they were willing to do anything to live longer and heal faster, that's why the pyramids were built. The original design for a tower that would help them escape death was built in the location of Babylon, and many say that some of the ancient tower's remains are still there. But whatever technology they were using in Egypt was considered black magic by the Quran, and we are told that fallen angels were selling this technology. Probably the same group of wizards that Moses confronted 400 years later. But we know for a fact that the pyramids were just one of the many technologies that developed by the Egyptians and people groups around the globe around 4,500 to 3,000 years ago, much of which still cannot be explained to this day. The post-flood world was mostly a barren wasteland. The flood that destroyed all life except those few on the ark that would seed the planet left very little wood or metal available for building and surviving in this harsh new climate, other than what they found readily available on the barren surface of the post-flood planet. And so they used what resources they had readily available, mostly mud, clay, and sand, to build these massive structures that would promise to help them fight against death. When God confused the languages, if you believe that sort of thing, various groups of tower builders traveled to other parts of the world to build towers and pyramids of their own. Not only does this pyramid or ziggurat design show us that all those ancient towers around the globe are somehow connected, but when we compare the internal chambers of the Great Pyramid in Giza and those of other pyramids in China, Central and South America, and around the globe, we can see that they were using similar technology to pressurize air and create a hyperbaric, antediluvian conditions inside these towers, using water volume and the weight of millions of tons of concrete and stone. Other towers would have also been built around internal ram pumps and Trompes systems to distribute water for irrigation and to work the towers and water canals of the pyramid complexes. Many people think that those pharaohs and kings who built the pyramids were trying to prepare for a life or transition after death. But there was never once a single mummy or human burial found inside a pyramid, other than a foot inside a chamber or a few body parts. Not a mummy. To me, this seems simply more evidence that those so-called tombs were actually used for practical, life-relevant applications such as irrigation, pneumatic rock-cutting tools, and hyperbaric therapy treatment chambers, just to name a few. How much would the average person be willing to pay for a therapy that is guaranteed to give health benefits like virility and longevity of the body? Think about that next time you wonder what would have motivated a society to go around these massive stone structures. There has recently been discovered a hidden chamber above the Grand Gallery, which could have been used as a reservoir to hold water, much like a modern toilet, which would have been used to flush the pyramid and refill the Grand Gallery with fresh water, or to allow for the occupant to leave their pyramid home and decompress in the outside atmosphere. There has also been shown to be a moat-like waterworks complex surrounding the pyramids and boats complete with oars alongside, buried in the sand. The water volume in this moat could be used to run a ram pump and refill the void after it flushed. 85% of the water volume from the ram pump would be sent out as some sort of fountain, perhaps at the Sphinx, since it has been shown that the Nile River had been diverted into canals all throughout the Nile Delta and up to the edge of the Giza Plateau, and the Sphinx was once surrounded by water. When the Grand Gallery 4 is filled with water, it lifts an elevator up to the king's chamber, where the environment can be sealed off for weeks or even months at a time. The king's chamber is the size of a Victorian house and probably had multiple levels to its living quarters. The volume of water inside the Grand Gallery would also create pressurized air inside the queen's chamber, and then be monitored to control the hyperbaric atmospheric pressure inside the king's chamber, using valves and gauges in the so-called air passages. Don't let the given names of the pyramid chambers fool you. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that the step pyramid was anything but a tomb. The entire step pyramid complex was built as a fortress, but also for a place of healing and meditation, complete with above-ground temples which could also have been pressurized and served the general public as a treatment center, among other things. The passageways underneath the ground are also covered in complex ornamentation, so it would make sense that the people were alive inside them to enjoy their beauty. To me, it would seem like a controlled environment for an entire family or royal court to inhabit was underneath the ground in those subterranean chambers. The central passage, for example, would be a massive air pressure tank once the complex was flooded with water, as we know it was. The grand shafts that some say are ancient granaries would have been filled with water, and the volume would have been used to compress the air inside to be used for running air-powered tools in controlled environments. This explains why so much weight had to be piled on top of the internal pressure tank, because if it were too light, the pyramid would explode, instantly killing anyone inside. Some say there is evidence in Egypt of an exploded pyramid, and even on Easter Island, where pneumatic tools were used to carve the Mui statues, as well as the island sphinx, or a watchdog that most people don't even know is guarding the island. What do you think the pyramids were used for? Why do you think mainstream archaeology would want you to believe that the pyramids are nothing more than massive gravestones that serve no purpose other than to house dead mummies?